Become. Written by Night Breeze. Read by No One and Nobody. Chapter 14. Princess Luna gently closed the door, well aware of the loud snoring that was coming from the other side. As she did so, Nurse Lifeline approached the princess nervously.
"How is it?" she asked. "He is fine. The poor thing simply wanted to talk," Princess Luna said as she took a quick glance back at the door. "Our conversation tired him out far more than I thought it would, and he actually fell asleep mid-sentence." "Did he tell you what he was?" Line asked cautiously. "I cannot say. I must meet with my sister and discuss what I have gleaned from the patient before I will discuss it with the medical team," she said as she swept past the mare. Is he dangerous?" Line asked nervously. Princess Luna stopped at this, then turned and faced the mare. "Is he dangerous? Yes, very much so. So is a pony or a griffin, or a minotaur, or any of the sapient species that inhabit our world. Should you fear him? No. In fact, he is far more scared of us than we are of him, especially in his now weakened state. I didn't keep an eye on him, Nurse Lifeline. He is not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. Keep me apprised of his condition. I will be consulting with my sister if I am needed," the princess said as she turned and left. "Yes, Your Highness," Lifeline said with a bow. Celestia rubbed her head in irritation. She had the possibility of an invasion looming over her head, the political nightmare that had forced upon her, and the day-to-day rigors that ruling a nation brought upon her. And yet, as stressful as all that was, it wasn't nearly as irritating as listening to Blue Blood ramble on about tax exemptions.
"Clearly, it was just a mistake, Auntie. You couldn't possibly think to impose such a tax upon me and my business. It is just too horrible to imagine," he said pompously.
"Blue Blood, we go over this every year, and for the last time, your company must pay its taxes regardless of who is currently running it, as do you," Celestia said dismissively. "You may be a prince, but you do not rule this nation, nor have any right in declaring who is and isn't exempt from its taxes."
"This is an injustice. Our tax code shouldn't apply to the prince of the realm," Blue Blood said indignantly. "If the tax code allows such injustices to occur, then I think it is high time for a reform."
Celestia's lips curled up in a smile at this.
"If you really think that the equestrian tax code needs a reform, then you will need to talk to the person who wrote it," she said as she raised a single eyebrow. "She should be holding court in about 4 hours, so if you would like to stick around until then, I would be happy to accommodate you."
Blue Blood glanced about nervously at that statement.
I was sort of hoping we could settle this without involving Princess Luna," he said, barely catching himself before he let something slip.
Celestia's eyes narrowed at this.
"I'm afraid that unless you talk with my sister, there is nothing that I can do for you. Especially not after a near slip like that."
"Ah, yes, of course. Then by your leave, Auntie,"
Blue Blood said as he turned and left with almost indecent haste. Celestia sighed as he left, her head throbbing unpleasantly as she watched him go.
"Why do I tolerate you, Blue Blood?" she said to herself.
"Probably because he is the last living descendant of the ancient unicorn royal family. Or have you forgotten that?"
Celestia heard her sister say as she entered the throne room from one of the side entrances. Celestia's face lit up upon seeing Luna.
"Please, tell me you have something more interesting for me than tax exemptions,"
Celestia said desperately.
"I do. Our friend awoke a little over an hour ago, but has since fallen asleep again,"
Luna said cheerfully.
"He did? How is he?"
"He is recovering, though poorly, if last night's accident is anything to go by," Luna said sadly. "His new eyes still do not work properly, and I have since ordered the lights in his room dimmed by a significant amount. I explained what we have done to him as well as I could, but I fear that something may have been lost in translation."
"How so?"
Celestia asked as she leaned in a little.
"He was thankful that we have consigned him to what may be one of the most agonizing deaths I can think of if he does not survive, and one of the most agonizing existences if he does," Luna said as she shook her head sadly.
"Ah, I see. Well,
I think we need to see this from his perspective,
Celestia said as she leaned back into her throne.
He has lost everything, has been imprisoned in an alien form, and let loose on an alien planet. His very reflection was a reminder of everything he has lost. As far as I can discern from the information that has been given to me, he probably felt he was a dead stallion already. His reflection has changed, now giving him new hope for the future. In fact, I'm pretty sure he craves companionship, far more than his own personal safety or comfort.
Princess Luna nodded thoughtfully at this.
I believe you may be right. Now, as sobering as all that was, it was somewhat off-topic. I believe you said that our new friend was awake? What did he say?
Celestia asked excitedly.
Well, he is apparently something called a human, which roughly translates to he who knows in our language,
Luna said ruefully.
His actual name is Alex. Alex, huh?
Celestia asked as she rubbed her chin with a hoof.
Yes, I was going to ask him about his capture, but I decided not to tear open old wounds. At least, not yet,
Luna said sadly.
A wise decision, though we are still going to have to ask him about that sooner or later,
Celestia said pointedly.
I know, but I would prefer to postpone that conversation if I can,
Luna said with a shake of her head.
At any rate, I asked him about his homeworld, and he tried to tell me, though he fell asleep mid-sentence. I am a bit fuzzy on some of the things he has told me, though personally I blame the translation spell for that. What sort of things did he say? He spoke of a world devoid of magic, which instead relies upon machinery and industry. His race knows of magic only as a fairy tale,
Luna explained. Celestia looked at her sister in shock.
How do they control their sun, if not by magic? And what about the weather, or the tilling of the earth?
She asked, confused at this statement.
From what he has told me, his world operates in a similar manner to how the Everfree Forest does, wild and uncontrolled. From this information, I would extrapolate that his planet has a very weak magical field. Though how his planet does not simply fall into the sun from the gravity exerted is beyond my understanding,
Luna said slowly.
I suppose he could explain that matter in detail after he has learned our language, though the fact that he has no prior experience with magic would explain quite a lot about his behavior,
Celestia said thoughtfully.
That it does, Tia, that it does.
Captain Hazalk winced as he eased into his seat, his aching back a clear reminder that he shouldn't have returned to active duty yet.
Status report on recovery teams, Lieutenant,
he ordered.
Team Zen's locators show that their bodies have been moved to Site Beta, while Q and Gel have returned to the Caliban and are en route to rendezvous with the ship as per your orders, sir,
Talion said as she saluted smartly.
That only confirms our suspicions that Site Beta is where the natives have taken the items that they removed from the wreckage. What about Subject 38?
He asked thoughtfully.
Subject 38's locator was moved to the castle on top of the mountain. It is still transmitting, so I would assume that Subject 38 survived the wounds that Zen inflicted upon it,
she said carefully.
Sir, what do you intend to do to it?
In the long term, I have no clue. I would like to return it to its home planet, but after what our scientists have done to it, I'm not sure that is even possible at this point. For now, we wait. We observe, and we prepare. I've already sent a Priority 1 message to the Hierarch, explaining our situation, and the ramifications that may present should the Cusan ship arrive and discover what has happened here,
he said as he started rummaging around for his pain pills.
Sir, it may take months for the Hierarch to respond. What will we do if a Cusan ship does appear?
Talion asked quietly. Hazalk didn't answer at first. Instead, he opened the bottle in his hands, then popped 2 of the small white pills into his mouth.
We will tell them the truth. We explain that traitors have broken the treaty, and we are simply here to clean up the mess they left behind.
But, sir, wouldn't that start a war?
Lieutenant, let me ask you something. Do you want a war?
Hazalk asked as he swiveled his chair towards her.
No, sir.
Neither do they. They might be able to wipe us out without much of a hassle, but it would still be costly to them. They would lose valuable lives and ships, exterminating our race from the galaxy. Not to mention that their soldiers may begin to question their orders once they reach the last vestiges of our people. No, they do not want a war with us any more than we do with them,
the captain said as he turned his chair back towards the view screen. Lieutenant Talion looked puzzled at this.
Then what do you think will happen? She asked.
I don't know, but I do know that they will be more likely to accept our apology if we punish the traitors responsible for this whole debacle, especially if they are allowed to take part in that punishment,
he said vindictively.
Yes, sir,
Talion said as she turned back to her console. Hazal continued to stare at the spinning blue globe on the view screen, completely lost in thought as he felt the pain pills kick in.
Poor sod. You have no idea what crap you found yourself in,
he thought to himself. Ilisk patiently twiddled his thumbs, well aware of the cameras and guards that were watching his cell. If he cared, however, he did not show it, preferring instead to give a 1,000-mile stare to the wall opposite from his bunk. Every hour his eyes would twitch to one corner of the room, then to the other, almost like the pendulum of a really slow clock. Finally, after about 7 hours of this, his eyes dilated and his antenna twitched, almost as if he were listening to something. His mandibles clicked in excitement at the sounds only he could perceive, and just barely. He tilted his head upwards to look at the ceiling. He then gave an almost imperceptible nod, as if acknowledging someone that wasn't there.
All according to plan,
he thought to himself. If you're enjoying this reading, consider checking out the non-copyright infringement version available on Amazon Prime. See link in video details for more information.